He built an empire worth billions. He put wrestling on every TV screen on the planet. He turned sweaty guys in tights into global superstars. And he made himself the most powerful man in sports entertainment history. And then it all came crashing down. Not slowly, not quietly, but in the most brutal, embarrassing, and painfully public way imaginable. And I'm talking about Vince McMahon because today we're going places most channels won't touch, because this isn't just a story about one man's fall from grace. This is a story about power, obsession, abuse, and what happens when nobody around you ever dares to say no. Let's start with the version of Vince McMahon that the world was allowed to see. The ruthless boss. The guy who'd strut down to the ring with that ridiculous walk, chest out, arms swinging like he was trying to take off, playing the villain on TV so convincingly that millions of fans genuinely hated him, and he loved every second of it. But here's the thing, people forget. That character, the evil Mr. McMahon, it wasn't entirely fiction, because Vince built WWE from a regional wrestling promotion into a global media machine by doing things nobody else was willing to do. Poaching talent from other promoters, undercutting them, and systematically dismantling the entire territorial wrestling system that had existed for decades, so that guys who'd built their careers, their towns, their livelihoods were just gone. Because Vince decided he wanted it all, and he got it. The man had a vision. You can't take that away from him. He turned WrestleMania into a legitimate cultural event. He created stars like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and John Cena. He made professional wrestling, this thing that polite society laughed at, into a billion-dollar publicly traded company. And that's real. That happened. And for a long time, it was enough to make people look the other way. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the dark stories about Vince McMahon didn't start in 2022 when the Wall Street Journal first broke the story about hush money payments. They go back decades. And former wrestlers, names you know, have talked about the culture inside WWE locker rooms for years. The hazing, the pressure to keep quiet, the unspoken rule that if Vince liked you, you were protected, and if he didn't, good luck, because Bret Hart wrote about it, Mick Foley hinted at it, and Chris Jericho, when he finally left, made it pretty clear that WWE under Vince was a place where the boss's word was law, and anyone who pushed back found themselves quietly buried. There was also the 1992 steroid trial, which people have almost completely forgotten, where Vince McMahon was federally indicted on charges that he had illegally distributed steroids to his wrestlers. And the trial was massive, the stakes were enormous, and somehow Vince walked away acquitted, and the wrestling world moved on like it never happened. But it happened. And these weren't isolated incidents. These were patterns. And the people who saw it up close either said nothing because they were afraid, or said something and were never heard from again. Then came July 2022, when the Wall Street Journal published an investigation that stopped the wrestling world cold. And according to the reporting, Vince McMahon had paid out over $12 million in secret settlements to multiple women who alleged sexual misconduct and other inappropriate behavior. And these weren't random accusations. These were settlements, legal agreements, money changing hands to make problems disappear, and WWE launched its own internal investigation. The board got involved, and on July 22, 2022, Vince McMahon, the man who had controlled WWE for 4 decades, stepped back from his role as chairman and CEO, putting out a statement trying to frame it as temporary, but everyone watching knew exactly what it looked like. Then came January 2024, and this is where it went from bad to something else entirely, because a lawsuit was filed by Janelle Grant, a former WWE employee, that contained some of the most disturbing allegations ever connected to professional wrestling, alleging that McMahon had coerced her into a sexual relationship, trafficked her to other men, including a former WWE executive, and used money and job security as leverage to keep her silent. And these are not accusations I'm making, these are detailed legal allegations contained in a federal lawsuit. And within 24 hours of that lawsuit becoming public, Vince McMahon resigned from TKO Group Holdings, the company formed after WWE merged with UFC. Just like that, gone. Now I want to talk about something that gets skipped over in most coverage of this story, because Vince McMahon didn't operate in a vacuum. He was surrounded by hundreds of people, executives, lawyers, agents, producers, talent, for 40+ years, and during that time, if even half of what's been alleged is true, people knew, or at least suspected,